Welcome to Season 2 of Through a Glass Dimly, a podcast about the truth and the lies we believe. This podcast is sponsored by Sophie's Dream Incorporated, a nonprofit to help people heal from trauma and PTSD through the arts. If you find this podcast beneficial to you, please consider donating to sophiesdream.org. I will have a link in the show notes of this episode. Make sure you like and follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and subscribe through Apple Music, Spotify, and various other podcast outlets. Your positive review and sharing this with your family and friends is very much appreciated. Thank you and enjoy the podcast. The Brainwashing of a Nation. Season 2, Episode 21. It was late fall, November 1981. I sat inside a place called the Reichstag. I had never heard of it before, but it was the beginning of my education in everything that took place there. The rooms were filled with gold-leafed objects, expensive artwork, and we drank champagne out of beautiful crystal goblets. We were the only university asked by the East German government to participate in an education program in learning communism, fascism, socialism, Marxism by the East German government. We studied everything from their point of view, 6 hours a day, for weeks. They spoke of redistribution of the wealth. They spoke of a utopian society where everyone is equal. They boasted how they had no crime, no drug addiction, and no unemployment like America did. Everyone was given a job by the government. It all sounded so perfect, yet there was this big disconnect. As I walked around the room to notice all the beautiful things that could only be purchased by people with a lot of wealth, I made my way to the window. I looked out at the drab surroundings towards East Berlin. The gray weather, the world reminiscent of trends from 40 years before, and something that I could not ignore. I saw the sad, blank stares of the people, starving, waiting in the 2-hour bread lines. Something was not right. As a 19-year-old filled with curiosities, I have always tried to observe my world around me and question if things don't make sense. The instructor boasted of this system being the best system in the world, but I raised my hand. I have never been one to keep my mouth shut when I needed some concrete answers. I asked her, if this system is so great, why is there a wall up that no one can escape? She answered, well, it is to keep the evil out. I then asked, well then, why is the barbed wire on this side of the wall and not on the other side of the wall? If this is such a great system, why do you have to force people to do what you say? Needless to say, she didn't have a response, and the room went silent for a while. The Westerners were only allowed to stay in hotels called interhotels for those who were visiting from the West. These hotels that were dilapidated and drab by America's standards were beautiful by the rest of the country's Eastern poverty-stricken way of life. It became clear that they wanted to give the impression by those visiting that all was well, and this was a system that was good for all of the people. Yet walking around the streets, the evidence was far from the truth. As a person who had the privilege to see inside the government's environment, and at the same time eat and converse with the common people, it was clear to me that some people thought they were more equal than others, and that was those who were in the government. The redistribution of wealth was stealing from the people and their hard work and money going into the gold-lined pockets of the corrupt leaders. The people could not see that they were controlled. Because they had been brainwashed for so long, we would go into the shops which were run by the government. There was no merchandise out that you can handle or touch. Everything was behind glass. You had to submit your passport to the shop worker in order to have permission to see an item, and there were a number of workers who watched over you as you looked at them. If you wanted to try on something, they had you go behind a curtain where a number of shop workers watched as you changed your clothes. You were watched and controlled everywhere you went. Does this sound familiar? I recently got out my journal that I kept while I was there. 40 years later, I read my perspective, and I was surprised at my insight, even though I was still a teenager at the time. I wrote, "The sun never shines on the east side. The people's faces are so sad and drawn. Who could do all this? As we are riding in our bus, stares come from everywhere, empty, curious, with such a longing in their eyes. Who could do all this? The children's faces are struck with fear as we try to give them a little happiness, a piece of candy, a little laughter, a smile. Do they understand the meaning of life and freedom? And I ask again, who could do all this? Something that was supposed to be a utopian society has become a mere prison. They have no individuality, no goals, no feeling of accomplishment, held prisoner by a large wall and hidden bombs. How cruel can this world be? How barbaric can man become? O Lord, help these people to find themselves in the midst of all this solemnity. Give them the confidence to go on knowing that this life is temporary and will eventually become dust just as it was created. Help them to see that there is happiness somewhere. The sun never shines on the east side." Many people say capitalism is evil, but that isn't true. Corruption of capitalism is. Capitalism is free enterprise, independence in being allowed, no matter who you are, to create, market, and sell and provide jobs. Many people who say they hate capitalism are working for a big corporation that is providing food and clothing for their family. Without capitalism, you have all jobs owned and run by the government. They will provide a job for you, and they will determine what you get paid and what you do. There is no room for creativity or independence or promotion, as everyone is treated equally. Hard work doesn't matter anymore because the individual never personally benefits from their hard work. So it creates a society of complacency and minimalistic behavior. The pay is so low that you are now a slave to poverty and the government. Many starved in Russia during the Cold War. It was found that the farmers who worked for the government only planted potatoes where the government inspected. The social services system is based on this, and that is why it is a complete failure. They don't help people get back on their feet and be independent. They make them slaves to government benefits. You aren't allowed to work in order to receive the benefits, and no one can live on $1,000 a month. So those caught up in the slavery of the system are forced to be criminals to supplement their income. My personal story is a long one. I had to go through the social services system personally to see how horribly corrupt it is and how it goes against human nature. Human nature is that people want to feel valued for their hard work. They want to have a purpose and be appreciated for their individuality and innovation. You take that away, and you take away their hope and reason for living. Almost everything I worked so hard for all my life was stolen. I assumed the government would help me. I assumed justice would be done in the courts. I assumed my tax dollars would be used to help me get back on my feet. But none of that happened. They take and use people as slaves. And then when they have taken everything from you, they have no interest in helping you to be independent again. They give people drugs to keep them in a constant state of confusion so that no one can stand up and revolt for what is really going on. They don't provide many resources that will heal someone, provide income to help them get their business back, provide counseling and nutrition that works. They just say, take this pocket change, but you can't work if you take it. So be careful what you wish for. Make sure you really are educated on what is going on. If the system worked, there wouldn't be such chaos, homelessness, crime, drug addiction, suicides in this state or country. I'm telling you as someone who has experienced it. It is horribly corrupt. No one is throwing people in jail for running criminal shelters, criminal senior care facilities, corrupt prisons, corrupt rehab centers. I worked at a rehab center. The owners got $20,000 per patient a month from the government and the insurance companies. It was supposed to be a detox center. They purposely kept the patients on drugs to keep the paychecks coming. The poorest of the poor and the most broken were and are being used to make money for the corrupt government workers who are getting rich. Abusers all do the same thing. They have to lie, control, manipulate, steal in order to get their way. That is what you call a person who hates themselves. They feel so unloved that they have to use manipulative tactics to get their way. They are trying to buy love, and everyone knows you can't buy love. So what happens to those who fool an entire country? They bite the very hand that feeds them because they know they don't deserve someone kind and generous. So they will destroy the very people who have provided for them. Listen to these quotes and guess who said them. By means of shrewd lies, unremittingly repeated, it is possible to make people believe that heaven is hell and hell heaven. The greater the lie, the more readily it will be believed. If the lie is large enough, everyone will believe it. The greater the lie, the greater the chance that it will be believed. Propaganda must be aimed at the emotions, and only to a very limited degree at the so-called intellect. The art of propaganda lies in understanding the emotional ideas of the great masses and finding through a psychologically correct form the way to the attention and hence to the heart of the broad masses. Something therefore always remains and sticks from the most imprudent of lies, a fact which all bodies and individuals concerned in the art of lying in this world know only too well, and therefore they stop at nothing to achieve this end. You will never learn what I am thinking, and those who boast most loudly that they know my thought, to such people I lie even more. The size of a lie is a definite factor in causing it to be believed, for the vast masses of the nation are in the depths of their hearts more easily deceived than they are consciously and intentionally bad. The primitive simplicity of their minds renders them more easy prey to a big lie than a small one, for they themselves often tell lies, but would be ashamed to tell a big one. Great liars are also great magicians. Make the lie big, make it simple, keep saying it, and eventually they will believe it. These are all quotes by Adolf Hitler. He said all the right things, but his actions were horrific. My first experience with a collective working system in America was after I graduated from college and had already been working at a computer graphics company in Los Angeles. I decided to leave California's stressful lifestyle for a while and looked for work out of state. I was hired by a company in the Midwest to set up their computer graphics division. Although I was only in my early 20s at the time, I was up on the newest technology known as computer graphics, and there were many who needed training and knowledge in this new medium. They told me when they hired me that I needed to join the union. Although I didn't want to, they said that since they were a company that insured unions, it was required. I had come from Los Angeles, where I worked an average of 12 hours a day at the time. My hard work and innovation led me to get promoted and get pay increases based on my work ethic and contribution to the company's success. That all changed when I started working for a company that was unionized. My first few months there, I just kept my nose to the grindstone and worked on building and training the department, buying and setting up the peripherals and protocols, creating policies and procedures, and developing a work pipeline that was efficient and easy to implement. As I kept my same busy schedule of long hours, many times working through breaks and lunch, I started to observe some very strange things. Things that would not be accepted or tolerated in my other non-union jobs. I noticed there were a number of employees that came in very late to work, took 2-hour lunches, wasted a lot of productive time at work doing personal business, and then leaving work early. There was even one woman that literally sat and read the newspaper all day long, watching the clock for when it turned 5 o'clock so she could go home. The people had no motivation to do well. I realized they were all getting the same pay, and if one person got a raise, everyone did. It was almost impossible to fire someone because of the union, and no one wanted to blow the whistle on anyone else because everyone was guilty of cheating the system. You could cut the complacency with a knife. A strange thing started happening to me. I have always been a self-motivated, innovative hard worker, but I was surrounded by people who were lazy, not doing their jobs, and getting the same benefit and pay as I was. For any human with normal emotions, they would start resenting the situation. Everyone wants equality, but at the same time, everyone expects that all people will equally put forth the same effort for the common good. But that rarely happens. So even me, with a strong work ethic, found my motivation to work hard start to diminish. If there was no personal benefit or reward for my hard work, and there was no punishment for me not adhering to the rules, then why not play the same game as everyone else? No one will get punished if everyone is doing it. This mentality, however, creates a destruction in someone's moral compass. Do what everyone else is doing, not what is right. Churches often complain that you have 90% of the work being done by 10% of the people. Some people will do the minimum to get the highest benefits they can. Those who lose out, the hard worker who is doing all the work but not benefiting from it. This is how socialism, communism works. The individual doesn't matter as much as the collective. But since this goes against how we were created, it will force the collective to do the minimum. I mean, why should someone work harder than the next person if they aren't going to benefit at all from their efforts? This happens a lot in abusive relationships. One person is a slave to another. The hard worker is paying for the lazy spouse who refuses to work and decides to play or drink or take drugs or cheat. The hardworking spouse is compliant for a while because they assume that the other person will eventually wake up and do the right thing and carry their load and be responsible. And through brainwashing, a person can believe a lie or a bunch of lies for even half a century. It's only when that hard worker is sick of having nothing and working all the time do they finally wake from the fog of deceit. But then what? The reality of the truth is shocking. It's never easy to let go of a philosophy that you believe to be true all of your life. It puts you in a state of trauma and disbelief and disorientation. I mean, where do you go from there? Where do you begin to start over and create a new life based on this new truth? Many decide the risk in facing it is too much to handle. They aren't equipped. So they decide it's easier to accept the lies and circumstances. The result being entrapment, imprisonment, depression, hopelessness. A clear sign of an abusive relationship is when they are constantly changing the rules. They want to keep control, so they make a rule and then make a promise if you abide by the rule. The problem is, you abide by the rule and the promise never comes because they keep making up new rules. Before you know it, you are buried in a pit of rules you can never keep up with and find out that they will never keep their promises because they never have. First, it was a 2-week lockdown. Now it's 11 months. Then they say if you wear a mask, they will open things up again. But that didn't happen. Then they said if you get vaccinated, they will open things up again. But now they're saying that even if you get vaccinated, you still need to wear a mask and stay locked in your home. The only difference now is someone is making billions of dollars on you, agreeing to a vaccine, and making billions on your business being shut down. The vaccine only boosts your immune system, and if you don't have an immune system, the vaccine won't have any effect. So why not try to do everything you can to raise your immune system naturally? Why get a vaccine that pinpoints only one strain of something that is constantly mutating? If you have a strong immune system, you can fight off any mutation of most diseases. Why do people insist on believing people that are constantly lying to them? Because facing the real truth can be too scary. They can have all the evidence in the world that proves the real truth, but they won't believe it because they would have to change their entire life if they finally accepted it. And many would rather stay deceived than go through the pain and fallout from realizing they have been believing lies the whole time. Last weekend, I got on the 5 freeway to head up to LA for the day. Driving along the freeway in Orange County, the roads were newly paved, clean, and the freeway embankments were embellished with beautiful palm trees, flowers, and freshly mowed grass. The second I hit LA County, the 5 freeway turned into a dump. There literally were overturned trash cans along the embankment with trash scattered everywhere. I wish I could have taken a picture. The graffiti covered the walls and the overpasses, and the roads were in such poor shape with potholes and cracks. I felt like I drove from West Germany right into East Germany. The vast difference in the two sides was excessively obvious for all to see. The problem is, the East side was never allowed to see what the West side looked like. Why is there such cognitive dissonance? Why do people keep voting for the very people and political policies that obviously are not working and haven't worked for years? You can see the evidence all around you, yet you refuse to admit it. Yet if you go to another county or state run by a different policy, there's order, beauty, less crime, job opportunities, and less chaos. It really boggles my mind. It's like repeatedly trusting a cheating spouse while they continue to destroy your life. Raising taxes will solve the problem? Has that worked before? No. Why not? Because the people getting the tax dollars are corrupt and don't use it for what they promise. They end up lining their pockets with it instead. The corruption is never addressed, and they never get shut down or arrested. Dumb and ignorant voters just keep giving them more money to waste. What do the businesses do when the laws, regulations, fines, and taxes have made it impossible to create any kind of profit? Do they just agree to continued gouging? Absolutely not. They are all about the bottom line. They will do what they can to keep their business afloat. They will either raise their prices on the goods they provide, lay off workers, close their doors, or move to a place that is more open to businesses and job creators succeeding. So when people say, raise the taxes, you know who really loses? The people. They lose their job. The price of the products they use go up. The resources for creating growing and thriving communities leave. It's the people who end up suffering for this, not the corporations or the businesses. They don't put up with it, and they leave the consequences of the impossible policies and tax hikes to the working class people. That's you. Most people don't want to face the truth because they don't want to admit they were wrong. But also they would have to change too many things, from friends to mindset to a whole new way of thinking. We must all commit to seeking the real truth about life rather than the truth that suits our narrative or defends one party over another. The truth is always in the evidence rather than the words. Words are cheap. Open your eyes. The evidence is all around you. If you are sick and your doctor doesn't make you well and actually is making you sicker, go get another doctor. Same with believing policy narratives. The masses have been wrong many times before. Remember that. The philosophy behind this mindset goes back to the Garden of Eden. God gave us all the evidence that He is good all around us. We can look with our eyes and see that everything he created is good. But then Satan comes along, and we just believe the words, and he has no evidence of his power or what he is saying is true. And somehow humanity can keep believing the lies, even though the evidence goes against everything they say. They believe the promises, but they ignore the evidence that what they're doing is the opposite of what they say. This is the sin that was cast on us from the devil, deception. So you have all these people who keep trusting a government that keeps stealing from them, lying to them, controlling them, making them sick with pharmaceuticals. And they still trust them and give them their money and rely on them to rescue and save the people. This is typical of an abusive relationship too. You believe the words but not the actions. When I was going through therapy, my therapist said, when someone shows you who they really are, believe them. We don't want to believe that someone could be horribly evil. We want to be hopeful. We want to give people chances. We don't want to face the truth that true evil exists, but it does. And if you don't know and don't realize true evil exists, you can fall prey to it very easily. We all want freedom. But having more and more of the government telling you what to do is not freedom. When you have leaders holding people prisoner in their own homes and mandating everyone comply with their demands, not allowing them to work to feed their family, you are agreeing to give up your ability to make decisions for your life, and you put those decisions in the government's hands. And let me tell you, they don't care about your well-being. They care about the money they are being paid to mandate and manipulate people to give them more power. What did Jesus say all about this? Plenty. People came to him and asked him a trick question in hopes of entrapping him. Then the Pharisees met together to plot how to trap Jesus into saying something for which he could be arrested. They sent some of their disciples along with the supporters of Herod to meet with them. "Teacher," they said, "we know how honest you are. You teach the way of God truthfully. You are impartial and don't play favorites. Now tell us what you think about this. Is it right to pay taxes to Caesar or not?" But Jesus knew their evil motives. "You hypocrites," he said, "why are you trying to trap me? Here, show me the coin used for the tax." When they handed him a Roman coin, he asked, "Whose picture and title are stamped on this?" "Caesar's," they replied. "Well then," he said, "give to Caesar what belongs to Caesar, and give to God what belongs to God." His reply amazed them, and they went away. Matthew 22:15-22. This scripture can have a number of meanings, and there have been many commentaries on it by scholars. I will give my interpretation. Give to the government what is the government's, but don't trust them to be your savior. Don't trust them to do what they say. So many people are worshiping the government more than they are God. How many hours have you spent talking politics versus studying your Bible and asking the Lord, the one who created you, for help? God is our ultimate provider. He has already given us the kingdom. We have such little faith, and we rely on the government and man to provide for us rather than God. Jesus said in his words, "So don't be afraid, little flock, for it gives your Father great happiness to give you the kingdom." Luke 12:32. Jesus in the previous verses expanded upon this. Then, turning to his disciples, Jesus said, "That is why I tell you not to worry about your everyday life, whether you have enough food to eat or enough clothes to wear, for life is more than food, and your body more than clothing. Look at the ravens. They don't plant or harvest or store food in barns, for God feeds them. And you are far more valuable to him than any birds. Can all your worries add a single moment to your life? And if worry can't accomplish a little thing like that, what's the use in worrying over big things? Look at the lilies and how they grow. They don't work or make their clothing, yet Solomon in all his glory was not dressed as beautifully as they are. And if God cares so wonderfully for flowers that are here today and thrown into the fire tomorrow, He will certainly care for you. Why do you have so little faith? And don't be concerned about what to eat and what to drink. Don't worry about such things. These things dominate the thoughts of unbelievers all over the world. But your Father already knows your needs. Seek the kingdom of God above all else, and He will give you everything you need. Matthew 22 through 31. When I was relying on dishonest people for my provision, I was the one who ended up suffering the consequences because they didn't follow through with their promises. Whether it was my abusive husband or father, an untrusting friend, or the government, you will continue to have your life be impacted in a negative way until you stop trusting the untrustworthy. If the government has repeatedly lied to you and your life is impacted in a devastating way due to its controlling, greedy policies, stop trusting those same people to rescue you. You trusting them is like trusting a robber who came and stole everything in your home. Remember, it was the government who killed Jesus, and every government after him has been responsible for killing and martyring God's people. So why would you trust them with your life and your provision? Trust God and trust Him alone, and He will provide godly sources to sustain you. I have so many stories that have proven this to be true. When you finally realize the real truth and start cutting dishonest and abusive people out of your life and stop putting your trust in people and institutions that have repeatedly betrayed you, your life will become more peaceful and less chaotic. If you are an honest, hard-working person who keeps their promises, but you have allowed people, employers, institutions in your life that are dishonest or abusive to govern your life, you will end up suffering, not them. Focus on not trusting the words alone. Look at actions over time to determine if someone is of good character. If you have been repeatedly hurt by the same people, remember, forgiveness and trust don't go together. You can forgive them, but you don't have to trust them ever again. Draw boundaries and trust the Lord to bring you honest people that can provide work and opportunities for you. Your life will slowly improve. Keep your promises to yourself and others, and only trust people who do the same. It is better to take refuge in the Lord than to trust in people. It is better to take refuge in the Lord than to trust in princes. Psalm 118, 8-9. Copyright 2021. All rights reserved. Reproduction of any portion prohibited except by permission. For information and questions, please contact us at feedback@throughaglassdimly.com. Thank you.